I only touched a phone buzzing on the kitchen counter, and his fist exploded like a hammer. He thought it was mine. It wasn't. It was the black box belonging to someone he'd never dare touch, and that punch opened the door that led him straight to his downfall. The device had been recording everything, uploading to a secure server he couldn't reach. By the time he realized whose phone it really was, the prosecutor already had all the evidence she needed. That night in our Grey Ridge kitchen, Daryl Quinn sealed his own fate with one swing. My name is Claire Whitford, and at 32, I never imagined I'd be living in my childhood bedroom again, staring at the same water stain on the ceiling that looked like a running horse. The pharmaceutical compliance job at Ardenvale Therapeutics paid well enough, but after the divorce, I needed time to rebuild. Mom insisted I move back to save money. Family helps family, she'd said, though I suspected Daryl had other reasons for wanting me under his roof. The kitchen in our Grey Ridge house hadn't changed much since Mom married Daryl Quinn 5 years ago. Same oak table where Dad used to spread out his woodworking sketches. Same window overlooking the garage where Daryl now ran his construction business. The smell of wet paint and sawdust had replaced Dad's cedar and pine, but the bones of the house remained. "Claire, honey, could you set the table?" Mom called from the stove, her voice carrying that forced brightness she'd perfected since remarrying. At 58, Lorraine Whitford, now Quinn, still moved with the efficiency of the ER nurse she'd been for 30 years, but these days, her shoulders curved inward, like she was perpetually bracing for impact. I pulled plates from the cabinet, noting how Daryl had rearranged everything. Glasses on the left now, not the right. His way, always his way. Through the window, I watched him in the garage, barking orders at his crew. Quinn Contracting had grown from a 2-man operation to the biggest residential contractor in the mid-Atlantic region. Success hadn't softened him. "Your stepfather's been working on something big," Mom said, stirring the pot with unnecessary vigor. "A development project out by Lake Pinevale." My hand stilled on the silverware drawer. Lake Pinevale, where Dad's workshop still stood, where his cabin overlooked the water, where I'd learned to plane wood and read blueprints, the property Mom inherited when Dad died. Now worth well over $1 million with the shoreline development boom. "He wants to discuss it over dinner," she continued, not meeting my eyes. "As a family." Family. The word sat heavy in the kitchen air, mixing with the scent of pot roast and something else, that particular tension that preceded Daryl's discussions. These weren't conversations. They were presentations where dissent wasn't tolerated. The back door slammed. Daryl filled the doorframe, all 6'3" of him, construction dust in his graying hair. His eyes, pale blue and perpetually calculating, swept the kitchen before landing on me. "Claire." Not a greeting, just an acknowledgement, like I was inventory. "Daryl?" He washed his hands at the sink, scrubbing with the intensity of someone trying to remove more than dirt. "Heard from your lawyer today? Divorce finalized?" Last month, I kept my voice neutral, setting down forks with precise movements. "Shame about that, though I told your mother. Career women always have trouble keeping a home together." Mom's stirring grew more aggressive. I bit the inside of my cheek, tasting copper. This was Daryl's way. Little jabs designed to burrow under skin, to establish hierarchy. In his world, my compliance work at Ardenvale meant nothing compared to his concrete and lumber empire. "Speaking of careers," he continued, drying his hands on Mom's good dish towel, "that desk job of yours dealing with any interesting contracts lately?" An odd question. I filed it away, maintaining eye contact. Just the usual regulatory reviews. His smile didn't reach those calculating eyes. "Good, good. Wouldn't want any conflicts of interest. Living under the same roof and all." The kitchen timer buzzed. Mom practically jumped at the excuse to turn away, busying herself with the roast. I finished setting the table, hyper-aware of Daryl's presence, of how he positioned himself between me and the door. Not threatening, exactly, just there, always there. "Dinner's ready," Mom announced with that false cheer. We sat in our assigned seats, Daryl at the head, Mom to his right. Me to his left. The oak table, scored with decades of family dinners, seemed to shrink under his presence. He carved the roast with surgical precision, serving himself first, then Mom, then me, every gesture a reminder of pecking order. "So," he began, setting down the carving knife with deliberate care, "let's talk about the future, specifically, the Pinevale property." My fingers tightened on my water glass. "Here it comes." "The market's perfect right now. Developers are offering top dollar for lakefront access, $1.2 million for the workshop and cabin combined." "Dad built that workshop," I said quietly. Daryl's jaw ticked. "Your father's been gone 8 years. Claire, that property's sitting there, costing money in taxes, when it could be funding real opportunities." "It's not costing that much. I've seen the tax bills." His pale eyes narrowed. "Have you now? Been going through your mother's papers?" "Daryl," Mom intervened weakly. "She's just concerned." "She's just nothing." He cut her off, voice still conversational but edged with steel. "This is a family decision, and in this family, we make smart financial choices." I set down my fork, appetite gone. Selling Dad's legacy to fund your development projects isn't a family decision. It's your decision. The kitchen went silent except for the tick of the wall clock. Daryl's face darkened, but his voice remained controlled. "You're living in my house, eating my food, and you want to lecture me about decisions? I pay rent. Below market, because family helps family, right, Lorraine?" Mom nodded quickly, eyes on her plate. I recognized the gesture. Submission. Peace at any price. The woman who'd once faced down trauma surgeons and belligerent patients now couldn't meet her daughter's eyes across her own dinner table. Daryl leaned back, satisfaction playing at his mouth. "The paperwork's drawn up. Your mother just needs to sign. The buyers want to break ground by spring." "I'd like to see this paperwork," I said. "Would you now?" His tone suggested amusement, but his knuckles whitened around his beer bottle. "And what exactly would a compliance officer know about real estate contracts?" "More than you think," I wanted to say, but I kept my voice level. "Enough to ensure Mom's interests are protected." The bottle hit the table hard enough to jump the silverware. "I protect this family's interests. Me, not some paper pusher who couldn't even keep her own husband." "Daryl, please," Mom whispered. He stood abruptly, chair scraping against the floor. "I've got calls to make. We'll sign those papers this weekend. Lorraine, be ready." He strode out, leaving Mom and me in the kitchen that suddenly felt too large. She started clearing plates, movements automatic. "Mom?" "Not now. Claire." Her voice was tired, defeated. "Just not now." I helped her clean in silence, but my mind was racing. 1.2 million. Below market for that much lakefront. And Daryl's sudden interest in my work. His emphasis on conflicts of interest. Something was off. Later, in my childhood bedroom, I pulled out my laptop and began making notes. Asset values, tax records, the development boom around Lake Pinevale, and deep in my stomach, that familiar feeling from work. The one that told me when documents didn't align, when numbers didn't add up, when someone was hiding something. Outside, I heard Daryl's truck start up, heading out for one of his evening meetings. Mom's footsteps padded past my door, pausing briefly before continuing to her room. The house settled into uneasy quiet, but I kept working, documenting everything. Because if there was one thing my compliance job had taught me, it was this. The most dangerous threats often came wrapped in family dinners and reasonable voices, and Daryl Quinn, construction king of Grey Ridge, was hiding something about my father's legacy. I just had to prove it. The patterns emerged slowly, like sediment settling in still water. Living in Daryl's house meant witnessing the small cruelties that had become Mom's normal. The way she'd flinch when his truck pulled into the driveway, how she'd rehearse conversations before presenting any household expense, the careful choreography of keeping him pleased. "Your mother understands sacrifice," Daryl announced one morning, finding me at the kitchen table with my coffee and laptop. "Something your generation could learn." I closed my screen slowly. She sacrificed plenty raising me alone after Dad died. His laugh was sharp. Alone? With his life insurance and that property? Please, I'm the one who stepped up, gave her stability, gave you a place to come crawling back to. The mug burned my palms. I focused on that heat instead of the words I wanted to spit back. I'm grateful for the room. That's why I pay rent. Token rent. He poured himself coffee, using Dad's old mug, the one with the Woodworking Guild logo. But money's not really the currency in families, is it? It's loyalty, support, knowing your place. That afternoon at Ardenvale Therapeutics, I tried to focus on the stack of compliance reviews, but Daryl's words kept echoing. Knowing your place, the phrase triggered something, a memory from our anonymous reporting system training, power dynamics, coercion, the subtle ways authority could be weaponized. My computer chimed. New message in the whistleblower portal. Usually, these were internal complaints, safety violations, time card discrepancies, the occasional harassment claim, but this sender had masked their IP, used encrypted routing, professional paranoia, or genuine fear. Quinn Contracting employs systematic wage theft, overtime hours deleted from system, workers threatened with deportation if they complain, have documentation, need someone who understands construction contracts. I stared at the screen. Quinn Contracting, Daryl's company. My training kicked in, document everything, maintain objectivity, follow protocol. But my hands shook as I initiated a secure response thread. This wasn't just any company. This was the man who controlled my mother's life, who sat at our dinner table, who was pushing to sell Dad's legacy. The whistleblower responded within minutes. You're Whitford from Regulatory? Heard you know construction from your father. Can you help? They'd done their research. Dad's reputation in the building community still carried weight, even 8 years later. I typed carefully. I can review documentation. Everything stays confidential. Can you provide specifics? The files came in bursts, timesheets showing 60-hour weeks paid as 40. Text messages from supervisors threatening workers, spreadsheets with 2 sets of books, one for inspectors, one tracking real hours, and photos of cash payments, always just under reporting thresholds. My stomach turned. This wasn't just corner cutting, it was systematic exploitation, targeting workers who couldn't fight back, and the scope. If even half these allegations were true, Daryl had built his empire on stolen wages. I needed outside eyes on this. The complexity went beyond Ardenvale's internal processes. After encrypting the files, I placed a call to the county prosecutor's office. Carroll County Prosecutor's Office, White Collar Division. This is Claire Whitford from Ardenvale Therapeutics. I need to discuss proper channels for reporting potential wage theft and fraud. It's complicated. They transferred me to Samantha Ives, an assistant prosecutor whose reputation for handling corporate crime was legendary. Her voice was crisp, professional. Ms. Whitford, I'm familiar with your work on the Baxter Labs case. What are we looking at? I chose my words carefully. Allegations against a major construction contractor, systematic wage theft, possibly involving falsified federal documents. The whistleblower came through our portal, but this extends beyond our jurisdiction. How solid is the documentation? Extensive, but there's a personal complication. The contractor in question, I have a family connection. Silence. Then, Quinn Contracting? My breath caught. You know about them? We've had complaints. Nothing stuck. Witnesses tend to disappear or recant. Your whistleblower still talking? For now. Then we need to move carefully. Can you meet? Discreetly? We arranged to meet at a coffee shop in the next county. I spent the rest of the day maintaining normal routines, reviewing standard contracts, attending meetings, but my mind kept circling back to those timesheets, those threatened workers, and to Mom, signing whatever Daryl put in front of her. That evening, I found her in the garden, tending Dad's roses. They'd survived 8 years of neglect, coming back each season despite everything. Mom, can we talk about the Pinevale property? She didn't look up from her pruning. Daryl says it's for the best. The taxes are increasing, And the maintenance? When's the last time you saw a tax bill? Her hands stilled. Daryl handles all that. When's the last time you saw any financial documents? Bank statements? The trust accounts? Claire, please, don't make this harder. I knelt beside her, gently taking the pruning shears. Mom, what happened to the woman who double-checked every medication dosage? Who caught billing errors that saved the hospital thousands? Tears gathered in her eyes. That woman got tired. Honey, tired of fighting, tired of being alone. Daryl's not perfect, but he's here. Being here doesn't give him the right to… To what? She stood abruptly. To manage finances? To make decisions? That's what husbands do. Dad never made decisions without you. You were partners. Your father is dead. The words came out harsh, broken. And I'm doing the best I can with what's left. She walked back to the house, leaving me with the roses and the setting sun. Through the kitchen window, I watched her start dinner. Movements automatic. Daryl's truck rumbled into the driveway right on schedule. At dinner, he was expansive, talking about the new development project. Pine Vale Shores, luxury townhomes. The land value alone will triple once we break ground. We? I asked. His eyes glinted. Figure of speech, though family investors do get preferred terms. With whose money? The temperature dropped. Mom's fork clattered against her plate. Careful. Claire. His voice was soft, dangerous. Questions like that sound like accusations, and accusations require proof. You understand proof, don't you, in your compliance world? I met his stare. I understand documentation, transparency, legal requirements. Legal, he laughed. Everything I do is legal. Every contract signed, every payment made. Your problem is you think legal means fair, but fair is for children and idealists. The real world runs on leverage. Is that what you tell your workers when you short their overtime? Silence. Mom's face went white. Daryl's expression didn't change, but something shifted behind his eyes. I don't know what gossip you've heard at that pharmaceutical playground, but my workers are grateful for their jobs. Good, honest work for good, honest pay. Honest, I repeated. He leaned forward. You know what's not honest? Biting the hand that feeds you, living under my roof while undermining my business. That's called betrayal, Claire, and betrayal has consequences. Daryl, Mom whispered. No, Lorraine, she needs to hear this. He never looked away from me. I've been patient, generous, but patience has limits. You want to keep playing investigator? Fine, but not from my house, not while eating my food. Make your choice. The ultimatum hung between us like a blade. Mom was crying silently, hands twisted in her lap. I thought of the workers in those files, the ones without choices, the ones Daryl had crushed under his vision of leverage. I'll start looking for apartments tomorrow, I said quietly. Tonight, he stood. Pack tonight. Family helps family, but you're not acting like family. I rose to match him. Neither are you. For a moment, violence flickered in his eyes. Then he smiled, cold and controlled. Your mother can help you pack. Though really, Lorraine, you should be thanking me. Cutting dead weight before it drags us all down. He left us there. Mom sobbing quietly, me standing rigid with rage. But beneath the anger, a cold clarity emerged. Daryl had just shown his hand. The threat of exposure had triggered immediate exile, which meant the whistleblower's allegations weren't just true. They were worse than I'd imagined. I had 2 hours to pack 8 years of returning home, but I also had encrypted files. A prosecutor's meeting tomorrow, and something Daryl didn't know about. Dad's lessons on patience, on measuring twice and cutting once. He wanted me gone because I was getting close. What he didn't understand was that exile wouldn't stop me. It would free me to act. The residence inn smelled like industrial cleaner and other people's troubles. I'd been living there for 3 days when prosecutor Samantha Ives called with an unusual request. We need you to carry a device, she said. Given the threats against our witnesses and your unique position, We're implementing additional security measures. We met at the Carroll County Courthouse. Ives was younger than I'd expected, maybe 40, with the kind of focused intensity that came from winning cases against people who played dirty. "This isn't standard procedure," she explained, sliding a sealed evidence bag across the table. "But Quinn contracting isn't a standard case. 3 witnesses have recanted in the past year. 2 moved out of state suddenly. 1 had a mysterious accident." Inside the bag was a phone, unremarkable except for the property tag marking it as belonging to the prosecutor's office. "It's configured to automatically record and upload when it detects sudden movement or impact," Ives continued. "Think of it as a black box for witnesses. Everything goes straight to our secure server, encrypted and time-stamped." "You think I'm in danger?" Her expression was carefully neutral. "You're a compliance officer who's exposed potential federal crimes. The subject has already demonstrated willingness to retaliate. This is precautionary." I signed the chain of custody form. "How long do I carry it?" "Through tomorrow's grand jury hearing. We're moving fast. Your whistleblower's documentation is solid, but we need to lock in testimony before anyone else disappears." The device felt heavier than a normal phone. I slipped it into my jacket pocket, another weight among many. "There's something else," Ives said. "We've been tracking financial patterns around Quinn contracting, large cash deposits structured just under reporting limits, shell companies registered to addresses that don't exist, your father's property. Has your mother signed anything yet?" "I don't know. She won't return my calls." "We'll need to move carefully there, if there's fraud involving the estate." She let it hang. We both knew what that meant. Mom could be implicated, willingly or not. I left the courthouse with the device burning against my ribs. The smart move was to stay away. Let the investigation run its course. But Mom hadn't answered in 3 days. And tomorrow was Saturday, the day Daryl had planned to have her sign the papers. The drive to Grey Ridge took 20 minutes. 20 minutes to convince myself this was just checking on her, not confronting him. The device sat on the passenger seat, innocuous in its evidence bag. I'd return it Monday, after the grand jury. For now, it was just a precaution. Mom's car was in the driveway. Daryl's truck was gone, probably at the construction yard. I used my key, calling out as I entered. "Mom, it's me." I found her in the kitchen, papers spread across the oak table. Legal documents, by the look of them. Her face was puffy, eyes red-rimmed. "Claire, you shouldn't be here," he said. "He's not here." I moved closer, scanning the documents. Purchase agreement for the Pinevale property. The buyer was listed as Pinevale Holdings, LLC. The sale price, $800,000. "Mom, no. This is way below market." "The lawyer said it's fair. Current condition. Immediate cash." "What lawyers? Daryl's lawyers?" I grabbed the papers, reading faster. The buyer's signature was already in place. Mom's line was blank, but a notary seal was somehow already affixed. "This is already notarized. How is that possible if you haven't signed?" Mom's hands shook. "He said it was just a formality, that they'd fill in the date later." "That's fraud. Mom, this is—" I pulled out my phone to photograph the documents, then remembered the device in my jacket. I placed it on the counter, angled to capture the papers. "We need to call someone, a real lawyer, the prosecutor." "No," she stood abruptly. "No police, no prosecutors. You don't understand what he's capable of." "I understand exactly what he's capable of. That's why we need help. He has friends everywhere. The judge, the sheriff, the planning commission. You think your little investigation matters? He owns this town. Not the federal prosecutors, not the state labor board." She laughed bitterly. "You think he's survived this long without protection? You're playing with fire, Claire." The back door slammed. We both jumped. Well, well. Daryl filled the doorframe, earlier than expected. His eyes took in the scene. The papers, my presence, Mom's tears. Breaking and entering now? "I have a key." "To a house you were banned from." He moved into the kitchen, casual but purposeful. "That's trespassing. But hey, I'm feeling generous. You want to say goodbye to your mother? 5 minutes. I stood my ground. These documents are fraudulent. The notary seal was applied in the presence of all parties, as the notary will testify. His smile was winter cold. Amazing how memory works. People remember what's best for them. The sale price is ridiculous. $800,000 for waterfront property worth over $1 million? Market's tough. Buyers are scarce. Your mother needs liquid assets. He picked up the papers, straightening them, which she'll have, once she signs, today. I won't let you. His hand slammed on the table. Mom flinched. I forced myself not to step back. You won't let me? His voice stayed level, which was worse than yelling. You're unemployed, living in a motel, playing detective, while I'm keeping this family afloat. Your mother understands gratitude. Gratitude for what? Stealing her inheritance? Threatening her? Threatening? He laughed. I'm providing. There's a difference. Right. Lorraine? Mom nodded quickly, eyes down. My heart broke a little more. See? Family harmony. He moved around the table, positioning himself between us. Now, you have 2 minutes left. Say goodbye. I looked at Mom, trying to communicate everything I couldn't say. Be strong. Don't sign. I'm fighting for you. But she just whispered, Go, honey, please. The prosecutor's device sat on the counter where I'd placed it, forgotten in the confrontation. As I reached for it, Daryl's hand shot out. What's this? My phone. Funny. You were just using your phone to take pictures. He picked up the device, examining it. This isn't yours. It's a work phone. You were fired 3 days ago, according to my sources. His eyes narrowed. Try again. I lunged for it, but he was faster, holding it out of reach. Nervous about something? What's on here that's got you jumpy? Give it back. Or what? You'll call the police? Please do. I'd love to explain how you're trespassing, harassing your mother, probably violating some corporate policy with company property. The device started ringing, not a normal ringtone, a sharp, official sound. Daryl glanced at the screen, and his expression shifted. Prosecutor's office? He read slowly. Why would the prosecutor be calling you? I'm cooperating with an investigation. Into what? You know what? The ringing continued. His face darkened with each pulse. You little bitch! You're wearing a wire? It's not. In my house? Recording my family? He stepped closer. The device between us. You have any idea what you've done? Mom stood frozen by the sink. I backed toward the door, calculating distances. The device kept ringing, that official sound filling the kitchen like an alarm. Answer it, I said. Tell them Claire Whitford is here. Tell them exactly where we are. His jaw worked. The ringing stopped, went to voicemail. The sudden silence was deafening. You're going to regret this, he said quietly. Both of you. I promise you that. Is that a threat? Because that device you're holding, it's recording, has been since you picked it up, streaming straight to the prosecutor's secure server. It wasn't true. I didn't think, but his face went pale. He looked at the device like it was a live grenade. You're lying. Am I? You want to bet federal prison on it? For a moment, nobody moved. Then Daryl set the device carefully on the counter and smiled. It was the most terrifying expression I'd ever seen on a human face. Get out, he said softly, and know this. Whatever you think you've won, you've just declared war, and I don't lose wars. I grabbed the device and backed out of the kitchen. Mom's terrified face the last thing I saw. My hands shook as I got in my car. The prosecutor's phone heavy in my pocket. I'd meant to avoid confrontation. Instead, I'd triggered something worse. But as I drove away, one thought kept circling. Daryl had been genuinely afraid of that device, which meant he had more to hide than even we'd suspected. The war was on, and I had my father's patience, my mother's need for justice, and now, a recording device that would capture whatever came next. The weekend crawled by with agonizing slowness. I kept the prosecutor's device charged and close, checking it obsessively, even though Ives had assured me the recording functions were automatic. Mom wouldn't answer my calls. The silence felt like a held breath before a scream. Monday morning, I returned the device to Ives as planned. The grand jury was convening that afternoon. "Any incidents?" she asked, processing the chain of custody paperwork. "A confrontation. He saw the device but didn't know what it was at first." Her pen paused. "Did he threaten you?" "Veiled threats. Nothing actionable." I hesitated. "He mentioned having sources, knowing I'd been let go from Ardenvale." "You weren't let go. You took administrative leave to avoid conflict of interest." She studied me. "Who told you otherwise?" The realization hit cold. "Nobody. I just assumed when I reported the conflict, someone's feeding him information. We'll need to be more careful." She sealed the device in a new evidence bag. "The grand jury meets at 2. With your whistleblower's testimony and the documentation, we should have indictments by evening." But at 1:47 p.m., her assistant rushed in, face pale. "The witness didn't show. His apartment's cleaned out. Landlord says he left in the middle of the night. No forwarding address." My stomach dropped. "He ran? Or was run off?" Ives's expression was grim. "Without live testimony, the documents alone might not be enough. Defense will claim they're fabricated, taken out of context." "What about the other workers? The ones in the files?" "We're trying to locate them, but if our primary witness vanished..." She didn't need to finish. They'd all be gone or silenced. I left the courthouse feeling defeated. Another witness scared off. Another investigation stalled. Daryl's reach extended further than I'd imagined. My phone buzzed. "Mom, finally." "Please come for dinner. 7 p.m. He wants to talk. To apologize." Apologize. Daryl Quinn had never apologized for anything in his life. This was a trap, obviously, but Mom was still in that house, still under his control. I texted Ives about the invitation. Her response was immediate. "Do not go alone." But who could I bring? The police were compromised. According to Mom, the prosecutor's office couldn't provide protection for a family dinner. I was on my own. At 6:45, I sat in my car outside the house, the prosecutor's device once again in my possession. Ives had reluctantly agreed to let me carry it one more night, given the circumstances. "Any sign of violence? Get out immediately," she'd warned. "The device will capture everything, but it can't protect you." The house looked normal from outside. Mom's garden was freshly watered. Daryl's truck was in its usual spot. Nothing to indicate the war being waged inside. I knocked instead of using my key. Mom answered, looking haggard but composed. "He's in the dining room," she whispered. "Please, Claire, just listen. Don't provoke him." The formal dining room was set for 3. Daryl sat at the head, hands folded, expression unreadable. He'd showered, changed into a fresh shirt, playing the reasonable family man. "Claire, thank you for coming." His voice was measured, controlled. "Please, sit." I took my usual spot, the prosecutor's device in my jacket pocket. Mom served pot roast again. Some strange attempt at normalcy. "I've been thinking," Daryl began, cutting his meat with precision, "about family, about what matters. Your mother helped me see things differently." Mom's hand trembled as she reached for her water glass. There was a bruise on her wrist, partially hidden by her sleeve. Fresh. "Did she?" I kept my voice neutral. "She reminded me that your father built something worth preserving. Not just the property, the legacy, the reputation." He chewed thoughtfully. "Reputation's important in construction. One bad story, one disgruntled worker talking to the wrong people. It can destroy decades of work." "Is that what happened to my whistleblower? Someone worried about your reputation?" His smile was thin. "I wouldn't know anything about that, but I do know about protecting what matters, which is why I have a proposition." He reached into his jacket, pulling out a folder. "The Pinevale property. I've reconsidered. Market value sale. 1.2 million. As you suggested. Your mother gets every penny. Clean transaction. No shell companies." In exchange for what? Peace. You drop whatever crusade you're on. No more investigators. No more prosecutors. We're family. We handle things internally. And if I refuse? He leaned back, studying me. Then things get complicated. For everyone, your mother's signatures on certain documents. Well, forgery's a serious charge. Even if she was coerced, proving that gets messy, expensive, reputation-destroying. You're threatening her with fraud charges for documents you forced her to sign? I'm explaining reality. Courts care about evidence, not stories, and I have excellent lawyers. Mom hadn't touched her food, neither had I. The charade of a family dinner felt obscene. There's another option, I said carefully. You could stop the wage theft, the intimidation, make things right with your workers. Nobody needs to go to prison. He laughed, a genuine sound of amusement. Prison? You really don't understand how this works. Men like me don't go to prison. We pay fines. Maybe settle out of court. Cost of doing business. The FBI might disagree. Federal labor violations, tax evasion, fraud. All allegations, no witnesses. Remember? He took a long drink of wine. Your move, Claire. Take the deal, and your mother's secure. Fight me, and everyone loses. The prosecutor's device sat heavy in my pocket. I thought about reaching for it, making the recording obvious, but something in his eyes warned me off. He was too calm, too confident. This felt scripted. I need time to think. Of course, 24 hours. Then we sign papers, either for the property sale or other documents. Your choice. He stood, dinner unfinished. Lorraine, walk me out. Claire can see herself home. Mom followed him obediently, leaving me alone in the dining room. I heard their voices in the kitchen, his low and commanding, hers barely audible, then footsteps on the stairs. I found my own way out, but stopped in the kitchen. There on the counter was Mom's phone, unlocked. Without thinking, I checked her recent messages. What I found made my blood run cold. Texts from Daryl. Dozens of them. Instructions on what to say, how to act. Threats about what would happen if she warned me. And photos, surveillance shots of me at the motel, at the courthouse, at my car. He'd been watching, planning. This dinner wasn't a negotiation. It was a demonstration of control. I screenshotted everything, sending copies to my cloud storage and Ives. Then I saw the last message, sent while they were upstairs. Device is definitely court-issued. Recording confirmed. Tomorrow. We end this properly. My hand froze. He knew, had known all along what the device was, what it did. This entire dinner had been performed for the recording, painting him as reasonable, me as the aggressor disrupting family harmony. But his final text revealed the real plan. Tomorrow, we end this properly, not with lawyers or negotiations. Something else, something final. I left through the back door, moving fast. The device in my pocket felt like a target now. Not protection, but it had captured everything, including his threats, his admission about the workers, his attempt to blackmail Mom. Whether that would be enough to stop whatever he planned for tomorrow, I didn't know, but I had one advantage he didn't count on. I'd learned patience from my father, strength from my mother's years of survival, and unlike his other victims, I had nowhere left to run, which meant I had to stand and fight. The war Daryl declared was coming to a head. 24 hours to prepare for whatever proper ending he had in mind. 24 hours to turn his trap against him. The prosecutor's device would record everything that came next. I just had to survive it. 24 hours. I spent them wisely. First, the Whitford family trust documents from the bank. As beneficiary, I had rights. Daryl couldn't block. The statements revealed what I'd suspected. Systematic transfers over 2 years. Small amounts at first, then larger ones, all to Pinevale Holdings, LLC. The LLC's registration? A strip mall address that housed a check cashing store. $382,000 total. Stolen in plain sight while Mom signed whatever he put in front of her. I photographed everything. built a paper trail that would make any forensic accountant weep with joy. Then I drove to the county recorder's office. Public records showed Pinevale Holdings was registered to Marcus Webb, Daryl's poker buddy, a man who'd never developed anything bigger than a backyard deck. The final piece came from an unexpected source. My phone rang while I was compiling evidence. Ms. Whitford, this is James Chen from First National. I was your father's loan officer. I heard you were looking into the trust accounts. My pulse quickened. How did you— Small town, word travels. Your father. He was a careful man. Had contingencies. A pause. There's a codicil to his will, filed separately, triggered only under specific circumstances. You might want to review it with your attorney. What kind of circumstances? The kind involving coercion or undue influence regarding the Pinevale property. He was very specific about protecting that land, and protecting you. The line went dead. When I called back, the receptionist said no James Chen worked there, never had. But the tip was good. My father's attorney, retired now but still sharp, met me at his home office. The codicil was real, filed quietly years ago. Your father suspected your mother might remarry, he explained, adjusting his reading glasses. He wanted safeguards. If anyone tried to force a sale of Pinevale through manipulation or threats, ownership would transfer immediately to you. And if there's evidence of financial malfeasance? His smile was knowing. Then it triggers immediately, along with a forensic audit of all trust activities. Your father was thorough. By evening, I had everything. Financial records, property documents, the codicil, screenshots of Daryl's surveillance, his threats, all uploaded to multiple cloud servers, with copies sent to Ives and the FBI's white-collar crime division. The stage was set. Now for the performance. Daryl had demanded a family meeting for 7 p.m., same time as the dinner 2 nights ago. He liked his patterns, his control, but this time, I arrived early. Mom was in the kitchen, staring at papers on the oak table, the same fraudulent sales documents, now with a new addition, a power of attorney granting Daryl full control of her finances. He says I have to sign, she whispered, tonight, or he'll— He'll what, Mom? What's he threatening now? She just shook her head, defeated, but I saw the fear in her eyes, the exhaustion of years under siege. Don't sign anything, I said firmly. No matter what happens tonight, can you do that for me? Claire, you don't understand. He has evidence that I knew about the trust transfers, that I approved them. My signature. Forged signatures aren't your fault, and coerced cooperation isn't criminal. I squeezed her hand. Trust me, please. Daryl's truck rumbled into the driveway at 6:58, punctual to the point of obsession. He entered through the back door, saw me, and smiled. Early. Good. We can skip the pretenses. He set a leather portfolio on the table. Sign these. Lorraine, power of attorney and property transfer. Claire, you'll witness. No. The word hung between us, simple, final. His jaw tightened. No? She's not signing anything. Neither am I. Then we have a problem. He pulled out his phone, showed me the screen, photos of Mom at the bank, signing papers. Amazing what security cameras capture. Your mother authorizing those trust transfers. Every one of them. Sure, maybe she was confused about what she was signing. But proving that? Expensive, embarrassing, destructive. You mean the transfers to Pinevale Holdings? The shell company registered to Marcus Webb? I pulled out my own phone, displayed the corporate records. The one that lists you as the sole beneficiary? That's not confusion, Daryl. That's conspiracy. His smile faltered slightly. You've been busy. So has the prosecutor's office and the FBI. Turns out wage theft affecting interstate commerce is a federal crime. Add in tax evasion, fraud, and intimidation of witnesses, that's serious time. Still no witnesses, he countered. Your mystery whistleblower vanished. But his documents didn't. Neither did the workers you've been threatening. See, once the FBI gets involved, deportation threats lose their power. They're offering protection in exchange for testimony. It was partly bluff. The FBI was interested but hadn't acted yet. But Daryl didn't know that. "You're lying." "Am I?" I set the prosecutor's device on the table between us. It had been recording since I arrived. "Want to bet your freedom on it?" His face darkened, the mask of control slipping. "You think you're clever, playing detective, but you missed something crucial." He stood, looming over the table. "This is my house, my rules, and right now, you're trespassing. Again." "Actually," a new voice said from the doorway, "she's not." Prosecutor Ives walked in, followed by 2 FBI agents. Behind them, a familiar face. The whistleblower who'd supposedly vanished. He looked scared, but determined. "Mr. Reeves here has been in protective custody," Ives explained. "Very talkative once he felt safe, especially about the threats you made to his family." Daryl's hands clenched. "This is a setup." "No, this is justice." I picked up the trust documents. "Mr. Quinn, you're under arrest for wire fraud, tax evasion, and violations of the Fair Labor Standards Act. Those are the federal charges. The state has its own list." "Lorraine," he barked. Tell them you authorized everything." Mom stood slowly, years of fear sliding off like old paint. "I authorized nothing. You forged my signature, threatened me, stole from my husband's trust." Her voice grew stronger. "And I'm prepared to testify to all of it." The FBI agents moved forward. "Daryl Quinn, you have the right to remain silent." He exploded into motion, not toward them but toward me. His fist came up fast, aimed at the person he blamed for everything crumbling. I didn't have time to dodge, but I didn't need to. The prosecutor's device, still recording, captured every second as his knuckles connected with my jaw. The pain was instant, explosive. I tasted copper, felt the world tilt. But I also heard the satisfying click of handcuffs. Ives's sharp command: "Add assault to the charges. That's on federal recording equipment. Assaulting a witness in front of federal agents." Through the haze of pain, I saw Daryl's face transform. The moment he realized what he'd done. He'd just attacked me in front of prosecutors, on camera, with FBI agents as witnesses. No lawyers could spin that away. "That device," he whispered, "it was recording?" "Every second," Ives confirmed. "Uploaded to our secure server in real time. Thank you for the demonstration of your violent tendencies. Mr. Quinn, makes the detention hearing much simpler." They let him out, his construction empire collapsing with each step. Mom rushed to me with ice, tears streaming down her face, but they were tears of relief, not fear. "The Pinevale property?" she asked quietly. I showed her the codicil on my phone, speaking carefully around my swelling jaw. "Dad made sure, if anyone tried to force its sale through threats or coercion, it transfers to me, along with triggering a full audit of the trust. He protected us, even after—" She couldn't finish. "He knew you might need protection, from someone exactly like Daryl." We sat in the kitchen where this all started, where Daryl had ruled through fear and control, but his weapons were turned against him now. The surveillance, the threats, the violence, all captured by the very device he'd tried to use against me. The house felt different already, lighter, like windows had been opened after years of stale air. "What happens now?" Mom asked. "Now, the FBI tears apart his books, his workers get their stolen wages back, and we restore Dad's workshop the way he would have wanted." I touched my jaw gingerly. "After I get this x-rayed." She managed a small laugh, the first real one I'd heard in years. "Your father would be proud. You fought smart, not hard." "I learned from both of you," I said. "Patience from him, survival from you." The prosecutor's device sat on the table, its work complete. Tomorrow there would be statements, paperwork, the long grind of justice. But tonight, in the kitchen where Daryl Quinn had built his kingdom of control, 2 women sat free. The war was over. We'd won. Not through violence or intimidation, but through careful planning, legal channels, and the kind of patient resistance that outlasts any tyrant. And if my jaw would be sore for weeks, well, that was a small price for the satisfaction of watching Daryl Quinn finally face consequences he couldn't buy, threaten, or punch his way out of. The courthouse in Carroll County had seen bigger cases, but rarely one that drew such a crowd. Quinn Contracting had employed half the town at some point. Everyone wanted to witness the fall of a king. I sat in the gallery, jaw still tender from that night 2 weeks ago. The bruise had faded to yellow-green, but the device's recording had preserved the violence in crystal clarity. Prosecutor Ives had played it 3 times during pretrial motions, each viewing making Daryl's attorney wince. "Your Honor," the defense counsel pleaded, "the video is prejudicial. My client's momentary lapse. Your client assaulted a witness in front of federal agents." Judge Martinez cut him off. "While under investigation for fraud, the jury will see what happened." Mom sat beside me, back straight for the first time in years. She'd been deposed twice, each session revealing more of Daryl's financial manipulations. The prosecutors had built their case like a wall, brick by brick, document by document. "All rise." The bailiff's command brought everyone to their feet. This was just the detention hearing, but it would set the tone for everything that followed. Ives approached the bench with a folder thick enough to club someone with. "Your Honor, the government requests remand. Mr. Quinn poses a significant flight risk given his liquid assets and history of witness intimidation." "That's absurd," defense counsel sputtered. "Mr. Quinn has deep ties to this community." "Which he exploited," Ives interrupted smoothly. She clicked a remote, and a spreadsheet appeared on the courtroom monitor. Exhibit 47, bank records showing systematic transfers from the Whitford Family Trust to shell companies controlled by the defendant. $382,000 over 24 months. Daryl sat rigid at the defense table, his orange jumpsuit a far cry from his usual contractor's confidence. He kept glancing back at Mom, trying to catch her eye. She stared straight ahead. "Furthermore," Ives continued, "we have testimony from 14 workers documenting wage theft totaling over $240,000. The defendant deleted overtime hours from company records while threatening deportation for anyone who complained." "Allegedly," defense counsel interjected. Ives smiled coldly. "Would you like to see the text messages? Or perhaps the second set of books our forensic accountants found?" The evidence parade continued for an hour. Financial crimes had a beautiful clarity in court. Numbers didn't lie, and Daryl had left a trail of them. But the moment that sealed his fate came when Ives played the recording. The courtroom fell silent as Daryl's voice filled the space. "You think you're clever, playing detective, but you missed something crucial." Then the sounds of violence, my sharp intake of breath, the crash of a chair. Daryl's snarl of rage cut short by federal agents shouting commands. "The defendant's propensity for violence when challenged," Ives stated, "makes him a danger to the community, especially to witnesses." Judge Martinez had seen enough. Bail is denied. The defendant will remain in custody pending trial. The gavel came down like thunder. Daryl's shoulders sagged. His attorney whispered urgently, but what was there to say? The evidence was overwhelming, captured by the very device Daryl had tried to use against us. Outside the courthouse, reporters waited with microphones and questions. I guided Mom past them to where our attorney stood. "Good news doesn't stop," he said, holding up fresh documents. "The trust audit triggered. Every improper transfer is being reversed. And this..." He handed me a sealed envelope. Inside, a court order transferring full ownership of the Pinevale property to me, effective immediately. Dad's codicil had worked exactly as designed. "There's more," the attorney continued. "Quinn Contracting's municipal contracts are under review. The company's already hemorrhaging money with frozen accounts. Your mother should prepare for bankruptcy proceedings." "Good," Mom said firmly. "Let it all collapse." We drove to Lake Pinevale that afternoon. The workshop stood exactly as Dad had left it. Tools hung with precision, wood stacked and sorted. Daryl had never touched it, probably planning to demolish it after the sale. "I used to bring you here," Mom said softly, running her hand along Dad's workbench. You'd sit right there, playing with sawdust while he worked. I remember. He'd be proud of you, standing up to Daryl, using the system, not violence. I learned from his example. And yours, surviving all those years. She shook her head. I didn't survive. I surrendered, piece by piece, until I barely recognized myself. You testified. That took courage. No. Watching you fight gave me courage. Seeing Daryl's face when that prosecutor walked in. A small smile played at her lips. He'd controlled everything for so long. He forgot other people could plan too. My phone buzzed. Ives, with an update. Grand jury returned indictments on all federal counts. State charges filed separately. Trial set for September. Your testimony will be crucial. September, 3 months to prepare for the final act. But the important part was already done. Daryl's empire had crumbled. His threats neutralized. His control shattered. What will you do with the property? Mom asked. I looked out at the lake, peaceful in the afternoon sun. Keep Dad's workshop running, maybe expand it, offer apprenticeships to some of Daryl's former workers, the ones he cheated. Turning his damage into something positive. It's what Dad would have done. We locked up carefully, preserving everything for the future. As we drove back toward town, we passed Quinn Contracting's main office, dark windows, chained gates, a handwritten sign, closed by federal order. I should feel guilty, Mom said quietly. He's facing 20 years, but all I feel is free. He made his choices, every forged signature, every stolen wage, every threat. The prosecutor's device just captured the truth. That device, she mused, such a small thing to bring down such a big man. Dad always said the right tool makes all the difference. We just needed something that could capture evidence Daryl couldn't intimidate or buy off. Back at the house, Mom's house now, free of Daryl's shadow, we found unexpected visitors, 3 of Daryl's former workers, hat in hand. Mrs. Quinn? Ms. Whitford, the eldest began in accented English. We wanted to thank you, the FBI. They say we'll get our money back, our overtime. You deserve that money, I said. You earned it. Yes, but we were afraid. He said he'd call immigration, have us sent away. Now, he straightened. Now we can work honest jobs, feed our families without fear. They left with promises to testify if needed. Mom watched them go, tears in her eyes. All those people he hurt, she whispered, and I let it happen. You were a victim too, but that's over now. The setting sun painted the kitchen golden, the same kitchen where Daryl had ruled through fear, where a phone had buzzed and changed everything. But the oak table no longer felt like a battlefield. It was just a table again, ready for normal dinners and morning coffee. The prosecutor's device had done its job. Capturing the moment Daryl's violence shattered his carefully constructed facade. But the real victory wasn't in that recording. It was in Mom's straight shoulders, in the workers getting their wages, in Dad's workshop waiting to create again. Claire? Mom's voice was thoughtful. That night, when he hit you, were you scared? I touched my jaw, remembering the explosion of pain. Terrified, but also relieved. He'd finally done something he couldn't talk his way out of. In front of FBI agents, no less, she actually laughed. His temper was always his weakness. You counted on that. I counted on the truth being stronger than his lies, and on having the right tools to capture it. The prosecutor's device, that simple black box, had been the perfect tool, unintimidating enough that Daryl dismissed it, sophisticated enough to preserve evidence he couldn't destroy. One small piece of technology, bringing down an empire built on fear. Justice grinding slow but fine, just like Dad's best work in the workshop, and like his craftsmanship, built to last. The September trial approached like a slow-moving train, inevitable and unstoppable. I spent the weeks preparing testimony, reviewing documents, meeting with Ives to rehearse every possible question the defense might throw. But the real preparation happened in smaller moments, watching Mom reclaim her life, piece by piece. The morning of the trial, we arrived early, Federal court had a different gravity than the county courthouse. Marble columns, metal detectors. The weight of justice made tangible. Daryl would face his reckoning here, in a venue his local connections couldn't touch. "Witness rooms down the hall," Ives directed. "You'll be called when it's time." Mom and I sat with the other witnesses, workers from Quinn Contracting, the whistleblower Reeves, even Marcus Webb, who'd flipped immediately when faced with conspiracy charges. The room hummed with nervous energy. 5 minutes, a bailiff announced. I was first. The walk to the witness stand felt both endless and too quick. Daryl sat at the defense table, thinner than before, his jail pallor replacing the contractor's tan. His eyes tracked me with cold fury. "State your name for the record." "Claire Whitford." "Ms. Whitford," Ives began, "please tell the court about your relationship to the defendant." I spoke clearly, laying out the history: Mom's remarriage, living in Daryl's house, my work in compliance, each fact a foundation stone for what would come. "Now, regarding the family trust established by your late father." Document by document, we built the case: the unauthorized transfers, the shell companies, the forged signatures. I'd memorized every date, every amount. $382,000 stolen through patient deception. "Objection," defense counsel called. "Assumes facts not in evidence. These were authorized transfers." "I'll allow the witness to continue." Judge Chen ruled. "The jury will determine authorization." Daryl's jaw tightened at each piece of evidence, but the worst was yet to come. "Let's discuss the night of August 15th, Ives said. "You were carrying a device issued by my office?" "Yes, a phone configured to record if it detected sudden impact or movement." "And what happened that evening?" I described the confrontation, the forced dinner, Daryl's threats about Mom's signatures, the power of attorney he'd tried to force. Then, he saw the device and became enraged. He accused me of wearing a wire, of betraying the family. What happened next? He hit me, with his closed fist, in front of my mother and the federal agents who had just arrived. I'm going to play the recording now. The courtroom filled with that familiar sound, the phone ringing, Daryl's voice, controlled then increasingly angry, the moment of violence, captured in digital clarity, my gasp of pain, the agents shouting, handcuffs clicking. Several jurors flinched at the sound of impact. One woman touched her own jaw unconsciously. No further questions. Defense counsel approached like a man walking on ice. He knew the recording was damning, but he had to try. "Ms. Whitford, isn't it true you provoked my client? By refusing to let him force my mother to sign fraudulent documents? By secretly recording him in his own home. The device belonged to the prosecutor's office. Its presence was legal. His assault was not. You went there intending to provoke a reaction, didn't you?" I met his gaze steadily. "I went there because my mother asked me to, because Daryl demanded it. I brought the device for protection, given his history of making threats." "What threats?" "He said I'd regret crossing him, that he'd destroy my mother if I didn't stop investigating his theft." "Alleged theft." "Proven theft. Would you like to see the forensic accounting report again?" He retreated. Damage done to his own case. Other witnesses followed. Reeves testified about the wage theft, voice steady despite his earlier fear. Workers showed pay stubs, pointed out missing hours. The forensic accountant walked the jury through financial mazes that all led back to Daryl's pockets. Then Mom took the stand. She wore the blue dress she'd bought for Dad's funeral. Hands folded in her lap. Her voice started soft, but grew stronger as she described years of coercion, signatures she didn't remember, documents she wasn't allowed to read, money disappearing while Daryl bought new trucks, new equipment, new toys. He said it was for the family, she testified, but the only family that benefited was his. "Mrs. Quinn," defense counsel tried. "You were married to my client for 5 years. Surely you trusted—" "I was afraid of him," Mom said simply, "every day, but I stayed because I thought I had no choice, until Claire showed me I did." The prosecution saved its strongest evidence for last. Not just the financial crimes or the assault, but the pattern. A dozen witnesses describing the same methods: intimidation, isolation, control. The defendant didn't just steal money, Ives summarized in closing. He stole dignity, peace, security. He built an empire on fear and thought himself untouchable. But in America, no one is above the law, not even men who think they own their small towns. The defense's closing was desperate, painting Darryl as a successful businessman brought down by a vindictive stepdaughter. But how do you argue with recordings? With forged signatures? With a man's fist connecting with a woman's jaw in front of federal agents? The jury deliberated for 6 hours, long enough to review evidence, short enough that the outcome was never really in doubt. On count 1, wire fraud, we find the defendant guilty. On count 2, tax evasion, we find the defendant guilty. The litany continued through all federal charges: guilty, guilty, guilty. Each verdict a nail in the coffin of Quinn contracting, of Darryl's reign of control. Sentencing was set for next month, but the federal guidelines were clear. With the assault, the witness intimidation, the scope of the fraud, Darryl faced 15 to 20 years. As they led him out, he turned back once, not to his lawyer or the gallery, but to Mom. His mouth moved, forming words I couldn't hear. She met his gaze without flinching, then deliberately turned away. Outside, in the September sunshine, we stood on the courthouse steps. Reporters had moved on to newer stories. It was just us, Ives, and the satisfaction of justice served. The trust funds will be fully restored, Ives confirmed. Restitution to the workers is in process. The Pinevale property is yours, clear and unencumbered. Thank you, I said, meaning it deeply, for believing the evidence, for acting on it. Thank you for having the courage to gather it. That device did exactly what it was designed to do, captured truth in a way that couldn't be disputed. She left us there, mother and daughter, free for the first time in years. The bruise on my jaw had long faded, but the recording remained. Digital proof that even the strongest bully could be brought down by the simple act of documenting truth. What now? Mom asked. Now we rebuild. The workshop, your life, everything he tried to destroy. It won't be easy. People will talk. Some still think he was a good man. Let them talk. We know the truth. The court knows the truth. That's enough. We drove home. Really home. Not Darryl's house, but Mom's house. In comfortable silence. The September air carried hints of autumn, of change, of new beginnings built on the ashes of old fears. The prosecutor's device had done more than capture evidence. It had captured the moment when everything shifted, when a violent man revealed his true nature, when the carefully constructed facade crumbled, when two women decided they'd had enough. In the end, Darryl Quinn wasn't brought down by some elaborate scheme or dramatic confrontation. He was undone by a simple recording device and his own inability to control his temper, by the truth, preserved and presented in a court of law. Justice served cold and precise, like the digital clarity of that recording, and infinitely more satisfying than any physical revenge could have been. The sentencing hearing arrived on a gray October morning. Darryl stood before Judge Martinez in his federal jumpsuit, the contractor's swagger completely gone. His attorney made one last plea for leniency, citing his client's contributions to the community. Judge Martinez wasn't buying it. Mr. Quinn, you stood in positions of trust, as an employer, as a husband, as a stepfather. You violated every one of those trusts. You stole from your workers. You defrauded your wife. You assaulted your stepdaughter when she tried to expose your crimes. She paused, studying the pre-sentencing report. The prosecution has requested 17 years. The defense asks for 5. But what strikes me most is the calculated nature of your crimes. This wasn't a moment of poor judgment. This was systematic exploitation spanning years. Darryl's hands gripped the defense table. For once, he had no words, no threats, no control. I hereby sentence you to 18 years in federal prison followed by 3 years supervised release. You will pay full restitution to all victims, $382,000 to the Whitford Family Trust, $240,000 to your defrauded workers, plus interest and penalties. The gavel fell with finality. As the marshals prepared to lead him away, Daryl turned one last time, not to Mom or me, but to the courtroom's digital recording system, the modern descendant of the device that had captured his downfall. His lips moved silently, and I realized he was calculating, even now, how the recording would sound on appeal. But some things couldn't be calculated away. The truth, once captured, remained. Outside the courthouse, autumn winds scattered leaves across the steps. Mom pulled her coat tighter, but she stood taller than she had in years. "It's over," she said, wonder in her voice. "The legal part, yes. The rest, rebuilding, that's just beginning." We drove to Lake Pinevale, where Dad's workshop waited. I'd spent the last month restoring it, replacing what time had damaged, preserving what mattered. 3 of Daryl's former workers had already started apprenticeships, learning the carpentry skills that had made my father's reputation. Mr. Whitford would be proud. Miguel, the eldest, said as he showed me a dovetail joint he'd just completed. "Clean work, honest work." That's what we were building now, something clean and honest from the wreckage Daryl had left. The workshop hummed with purpose again, creating instead of destroying. Mom had started visiting regularly, sometimes just sitting on the bench where she'd once held me as a child. The fear that had lived in her eyes for 5 years was fading, replaced by something I hadn't seen since before Dad died: hope. "I'm thinking of going back to nursing," she said one afternoon, watching Miguel teach another worker how to read grain patterns. "Part-time at first. I miss being useful." "You were always useful. Daryl just made you forget." She nodded slowly. "I let him make me forget. That's the part I struggle with, how I let it happen. Survival isn't shameful, Mom, and you survived long enough to testify. That took real courage." The workshop door opened, and Prosecutor Ives entered, dressed casually for once. She'd stopped by to see the restoration, curious about the place that had been at the center of so much conflict. "Beautiful work," she said, admiring the hand-carved details Dad had left throughout the space. "Worth fighting for." "Every splinter," I agreed, though I never imagined the fight would end like this, with paperwork and recordings instead of whatever I thought revenge would look like. "The best revenge is often just truth presented clearly," Ives said. That device did exactly what it was meant to do, removed the ability to deny or distort reality. Daryl Quinn spent years bending truth to his will. The recording simply showed what was. She left after purchasing one of Miguel's first completed pieces, a small jewelry box with perfect joints. "For my daughter," she explained, to remind her that good things can come from dark places. As the sun set over Lake Pinevale, Mom and I locked up the workshop. The building that Daryl had planned to demolish for profit now stood as a testament to everything he'd failed to destroy. The legacy he'd tried to steal had been preserved, transformed, made stronger. "One more stop," I said, driving us back through town. The offices of Quinn Contracting sat empty, windows dark, parking lot cracking with weeds already pushing through. A "for sale by court order" sign hung crooked on the chain-link fence. The empire built on stolen wages and intimidation had collapsed completely, its king serving the first of 18 years. "Do you feel sorry for him?" Mom asked, staring at the abandoned building. "No. He had every chance to choose differently, to pay fair wages, to treat you with respect, to build something honest. He chose exploitation every time. And that choice led here, exactly here, to a prison cell and a dead business, while Dad's workshop thrives with the very workers he cheated." We drove home in peaceful silence. At the house, I helped Mom prepare dinner, a simple meal, eaten without fear, at the oak table that had witnessed so much. No one sat at the head anymore. We'd removed that chair entirely, opening the space. My jaw hadn't hurt in months, But sometimes I still felt the phantom impact when I looked at that corner of the kitchen, the corner where a phone had buzzed, where Daryl had chosen violence, where a simple recording device had captured the truth that set us free. Claire? Mom's voice was thoughtful as she cleared the dishes. That prosecutor's device, such a small thing to change everything. Small things often do. Dad always said the right tool makes all the difference. And the right person to use it, she added. I'm proud of you, for fighting smart, for not becoming like him. I had good examples, you and Dad both, in different ways. Later, alone in my apartment, my own space, earned and paid for, I pulled up the workshop's books. Orders were coming in steadily. The apprentices were learning fast. Mom was smiling again. The trust fund was restored, even growing with careful investment. Everything Daryl had tried to take had been returned, made better by the taking and the recovering. His imprisonment wasn't just punishment. It was prevention. No more workers would lose wages to his greed. No more women would shrink under his control. No more families would be hollowed out by his manipulation. The prosecutor's device sat in an evidence locker somewhere, its work complete. But its real legacy lived in the workshop's revival, in Mom's straightened shoulders, in the justice that had been served cold and exact as a digital recording. I closed the books and prepared for bed, at peace for the first time in years. Tomorrow, there would be wood to shape, skills to teach, a business to grow, life to be lived without fear, without watching for the next blow. Daryl Quinn had thought himself untouchable, a king in his small domain. But kingdoms built on fear always fall, and sometimes, all it takes is one person willing to hold up a mirror or a recording device to show the world what really lies beneath the crown. The bruise on my jaw had long faded, but the truth it revealed would last forever, preserved in court records and federal databases, a permanent reminder that no amount of money or local influence could overcome documented facts. Justice served, revenge achieved, not through violence or schemes, but through the simple act of capturing truth and presenting it to those with the power to act. And in the end, that was more satisfying than any punch could ever be. Thank you so much for listening to this story. I'd love to know where you're listening from. Drop a comment below and let's connect. If you enjoyed this tale of justice served cold, please subscribe to the channel and share your thoughts. What would you have done in Claire's situation? Let me know in the comments.